Sarah had been working at Bella Vista, a fancy restaurant in the heart of the city, for almost a year now. It was the kind of place where people wore suits and designer dresses just to eat dinner. Expensive wines, 5-course meals, and soft piano. Music made the restaurant feel more like a theater than a place to eat. But for Sarah, it was just her job. She wore her plain black uniform, tied her hair into a neat bun, and moved quietly between tables, carrying trays and filling glasses. She was not someone people noticed. Her shoes didn't click on the floor like the high heels of the rich women who came to dine. Her voice wasn't loud, and she never laughed too hard. She was polite, careful, and always on time. But in a place like Bella Vista, being polite didn't get you noticed, it just helped you avoid trouble. Most of the guests never looked her in the eye. They waved their hands to call her like she was a machine, not a person. Sometimes they spoke to her as if she didn't understand English. Others acted like she was invisible. Sarah had grown used to it. She told herself not to care. She wasn't here to be like she was here to pay rent, to help her younger brother with school, and to survive. But some nights were harder than others. Some nights people laughed too loudly, threw rude jokes around, and made her feel smaller than she already felt. One Friday evening, just before sunset, the restaurant was extra busy. A rich business family had booked 2 long tables for a birthday dinner. They were loud from the moment they walked in, laughing, talking about money, and showing off their watches and handbags. Sarah was assigned to serve their tables. As soon as she brought the water, one of the young men smirked and said, "I'll have sparkling water, not whatever this is." The others chuckled. Sarah nodded quietly, walked back to the kitchen, and took a deep breath. It wasn't the first time someone spoke to her like that. It wouldn't be the last. Still, it stung. She returned with the sparkling water, placed it gently on the table, and moved on to take the rest of the orders. As she walked back and forth, serving starters and drinks, she could hear them talking about her. "She's so slow," one woman whispered, not quietly enough. "She looks like she hasn't smiled in 10 years, another man said, laughing. "Maybe she's saving up to buy better shoes," someone added. They laughed. Sarah heard every word, but she kept her face calm and her steps steady. Inside, her heart was heavy. She wanted to scream or cry, or at least walk away. But instead, she picked up another tray and kept going. The restaurant's regular pianist, Mr. Carl, was supposed to start playing at 7 p.m. sharp. Every evening, his music filled the restaurant with soft, soothing sounds. It was part of Bella Vista's charm. But tonight, he wasn't there. At 7:05 p.m., the manager, a short man named Leo, came out of the kitchen looking stressed. He whispered something to one of the waiters, who shook his head. Then he looked around the room, nervous. Sarah knew something was wrong. 10 minutes passed, and the piano remained silent. The usual warmth of the restaurant started to fade without the music. People were still talking and eating, but something felt off. It was like a movie playing without a soundtrack. At the large table, one of the birthday guests looked around and said loudly, "Where's the music? What's this? Silence is not what I paid for." Others agreed. Someone snapped their fingers. To get the manager's attention, Leo walked over quickly and apologized, saying the pianist was stuck in traffic. "We're doing our best to find a replacement," he added. A man at the table, clearly one of the louder guests, said with a grin, "Why don't we let the waitress play?" And pointed right at Sarah. The whole table burst into laughter. Sarah was in the middle of serving soup at the next table when she heard it. Her hands froze for a moment. She didn't look at them. She just kept working, but something inside her stirred. Sarah had played the piano since she was a child. Her mother had been a school music teacher, and their tiny house had an old upright piano in the living room. Some of Sarah's best memories were of her sitting beside her mother, learning to play Chopin, Mozart, and even some jazz. She had loved music deeply, and for a while, she had even dreamed of being a professional pianist. But life didn't care about dreams. After her mother got sick and passed away, Sarah had to grow up quickly. Her father left soon after, and she became the caretaker for her little brother. Money was tight. She had to drop out of college, forget about music school, and work wherever she could. The piano sat untouched for months, then years. Eventually they sold it to pay for rent. Still, the music never left her. Sometimes after the restaurant closed, Sarah would sneak to the piano in the corner and play for a few minutes before cleaning up. No one knew. She didn't want anyone to know. But tonight something was different. Not the laughter, the rudeness, the silence where music should have been. It all came together in a strange way. She found herself walking toward the manager. "Excuse me, Leo," she said softly. "If you like, I could play." Leo looked at her, confused. "You?" "How to play?" She nodded. He hesitated. "It's not a toy." "That's a grand piano, I know," she replied. He looked around. Guests were growing impatient. Some were checking their watches. Others were whispering. He sighed. "Fine. Just one song. If it doesn't work, you stop immediately." "Got it?" Sarah nodded again. She walked slowly toward the piano. The restaurant was full, but it felt like she was walking alone in a tunnel. Her legs were shaky, her fingers numb. She kept going. As she sat on the bench, the rude table noticed and started chuckling again. "Oh, wow." The waitress took it seriously. One of them said, "Get your cameras ready," joked another. Sarah placed her fingers gently on the keys. She closed her eyes for a second, blocking out everything. Clinking of glasses, the whispers, the judgment. She thought of her mother. She thought of the nights she sat beside her, learning how to move her hands softly, how to feel the music. And then she began to play. The first note floated through the air like a drop of water in a still lake. Then another, and another. A soft melody began to build, slow and emotional. At first, people kept eating, not paying much attention, but then they stopped. One by one, heads turned. Forks were set down. Conversations faded. Sarah's hands moved with grace and confidence, something no one had seen in her before. She played a classical piece, filled with beauty and sadness, something from the depths of her heart. It spoke louder than words ever. Kadat, the rude table, was silent. The birthday guest who had joked about her now stared with his mouth slightly open. His phone hung loosely in his hand, forgotten. Sarah didn't notice. She was lost in the music. The piano was not a job, not a duty. It was her home. Each note she played told a piece of her story, the pain, the hope, the dreams she had buried. It all came rushing out. She ended the song with a slow, gentle chord. For a moment, the restaurant was completely still. Then a single clap, then two, and suddenly, a wave of applause filled the room. People stood up, clapping loudly, some even cheering. Someone shouted, "Bravo!" Another yelled, "That was amazing." Sarah looked up, shocked. She had never played in front of so many people. Before, her hands trembled again, but this time with disbelief. She stood up slowly and bowed her head. She looked toward the rude table. The man who mocked her was now clapping, trying to smile, clearly embarrassed. The others at the table avoided her eyes. Leo, the manager, rushed to her side. "Why didn't you tell me you could play like that?" he asked. Sarah gave a small smile. "No one ever asked." And just like that, the girl they ignored, the one they laughed at, the one they saw only as a waitress, became the center of the room. That night, Sarah didn't just serve food. She served a reminder that talent has no uniform, that grace can be silent, and that the quietest person in the room can sometimes have the loudest soul. And though she didn't know it yet, this night would change her life forever. Sarah's fingers were still trembling even after she walked away from the piano. She had only played one piece, but it felt like she had just finished running a race. The applause still echoed in her ears, not just from the people clapping, but from deep inside her heart. For the first time in a long while, she felt seen not as a waitress, not as someone people ignored, but as someone with something beautiful to offer. She tried to slip back into her work quietly, but that wasn't possible anymore. People were looking at her, smiling at her. A few even tried to wave her over just to say something kind. One elderly couple whispered to her as she walked past their table, "That was the most beautiful thing we've heard in years." Another lady touched her arm gently and said, "You should be on a stage, not carrying plates." Even her coworkers, who had always kept their distance or treated her like she was just a background character, began to look at her differently. One of the senior waiters, Thomas, who had never spoken more than a few words to her before, walked over and said, "That was some real magic. I didn't know you had that in you." Sarah just smiled politely, still unsure how to respond. It all felt strange. It's almost like a dream. But the people at the table, the ones who had laughed at her, were now completely silent. They didn't clap loudly. They didn't say anything. They just looked at her with confused faces, as if trying to understand how a girl like her could do something so powerful. The man who had joked about letting the waitress play couldn't meet her eyes. He pretended to be busy on his phone, but Sarah saw his hands weren't even moving. It didn't matter. She didn't play for them. She had played for herself, for her mother, for everything she had lost and everything she still held inside. Later that evening, while the other staff were busy cleaning up after the dinner rush, Leo, the manager, called her into his office. Sarah hesitated. She thought maybe she had done something wrong. Maybe playing the piano without real permission had broken some rule. She knocked softly and stepped inside. Leo was sitting at his desk, looking at his computer screen. He looked up and smiled. "You surprised everyone tonight," he said. Sarah gave a shy nod. "I hope I didn't cause any trouble," he chuckled. "Trouble? You saved the night?" The guests were restless, and you turned the mood around with one song. "I had no idea you could play like that." "I don't usually tell people," she said quietly. "Why not?" he asked, genuinely curious. She hesitated. "People see me as a waitress. They don't really care what else I do." Leo leaned back in his chair. "Well, maybe they should, because tonight, for 5 minutes, every single person in that room forgot about their food, their phones, their business talks. You made them feel something." Sarah wasn't sure what to say. No one had ever spoken to her like that at work. "I was thinking," Leo continued, "maybe, if you're okay with it, you could play again sometime. Not just to fill in, but maybe regularly. Even just one song a night." Sarah's eyes widened. "You want me to play?" "As part of the restaurant?" Leo nodded. "Just think about it. No pressure." She left the office in a daze. Part of her wanted to say yes right away, but another part of her was scared. She had kept her love for music hidden for so long that showing it felt like opening a secret door into her soul. She wasn't sure she was ready for that. That night, after her shift ended, Sarah didn't go straight home. Instead, she walked a few blocks to the old church where she sometimes practiced late at night. The church was always quiet, and the priest there, Father Gabriel, had given her permission to use the piano as long as she cleaned up after herself. She entered silently, and the warm glow from the small lamps made the place feel peaceful. She sat at the worn piano in the corner and started playing softly. Her hands moved without thinking. The music poured out like a conversation between her heart and the keys. She didn't play anything fancy, just a slow, simple melody her mother used to hum while cooking dinner. The memories came back like waves. After a few minutes, she heard footsteps behind her. She turned and saw Father Gabriel smiling gently. "Big night?" he asked. Sarah nodded. "I played at work." "You always play here?" he teased. "No. I played in front of people at the restaurant." They clapped. Father Gabriel chuckled softly. "Well, I've been clapping for years. Took them long enough?" Sarah laughed for the first time in days. A real full laugh. He sat beside her on the wooden bench. "What are you afraid of, Sarah?" She thought about it. "I don't know. Maybe that I'll get used to being seen. And then one day it'll go away again." He nodded slowly. "It's a scary thing being noticed. But even scarier is hiding your gift from the world." They sat in silence for a while. Sarah closed her eyes and played again. Just a short piece, but it filled the old church with warmth. Want to stop the next day at the restaurant? Word had already spread among the staff. People smiled at her differently now, not the fake, quick smiles, but real ones. She could feel it. Even the chefs in the kitchen gave her a thumbs up when she passed by. For once, she didn't feel invisible. During her break, she checked her phone and saw something that made her heart skip a beat. One of the guests from last night had posted a short video of her playing on social media. The caption read, "When the waitress becomes the star." It had already gotten thousands of likes and hundreds of comments. People were asking who she was. Some wrote things like, "This gave me chills," and "Why is she not famous?" Sarah didn't know how to feel. It was exciting, but also terrifying. By evening, guests who had seen the video started showing up at the restaurant, asking if the piano waitress would be playing again. Leo gave her an encouraging look. "Are you ready?" he asked Sarah, nodded slowly. She sat at the piano again, this time not as a last-minute backup, but as someone people were waiting to hear. The room quieted down as she began. This time she played something more joyful, light, quick, full of hope. People tapped their glasses in rhythm, and by the end, the whole room clapped along. When she finished, the applause was even louder than before. She stood, bowed slightly, and smiled a real smile. After the performance, a man in a suit approached her. "That was incredible," he said. "Do you have a YouTube channel?" Sarah shook her head. "Well, you should," he said, handing her his business card. "I work in music marketing. I'd love to help you share your talent." She took the card with shaking hands and nodded, still in disbelief. By the end of the week, 3 more videos of her performances had been shared online. Each one brought more views, more kind comments, more messages. People were calling the restaurant asking when she'd play next. Some even came just to watch her, not to eat. Sarah felt like she was living in someone else's story. She was still the same girl who took the bus every morning, who made sure her brother finished his homework, who brought home leftover bread from the kitchen. But now, people looked at her and saw something more. Still, not everything was perfect. Some coworkers started getting jealous. Few whispered things like, "She's not even a real performer," or "It's just a lucky moment." Sarah heard them. She pretended not to care, but it hurt. Even the rude group who had laughed at her came back one evening. They sat quietly this time. No jokes, no rude comments, just silence. After her song, the same man who had mocked her stood and clapped, then nodded at her as if to say sorry. He never said the words, but Sarah saw the apology in his eyes. One night, while cleaning up after her performance, Leo approached her again. "You know, you could do more than this," he said. "You've got real talent. People love you." Sarah looked at him unsure. He continued, "I know someone at the city's music conservatory. He owes me a favor." "Want me to introduce you?" Sarah's heart raced. That was the kind of school she had dreamed of going to years ago. She had given up on it long ago. But now? "Think about it," Leo said, "and let me know." That night, Sarah sat at home on her small bed, looking at the card the music marketer gave her in one hand and the restaurant schedule in the other. Her little brother was doing homework on the floor beside her. "Are you going to be famous now?" he asked with a grin. She smiled. "I don't know. Can I come with you when you go on tour?" he asked. She laughed. "Only if you do your math homework." He groaned and went back to solving equations. Sarah looked around their tiny apartment. The walls were thin. The kitchen light flickered sometimes. He still didn't have a TV, but for the first time in years. The place didn't feel small, it felt full of dreams again. And she was ready to dream too, because something had changed. The moment she touched those piano keys, not just in the people who heard her, but in herself. It was a rainy Thursday evening. The sky outside was full of dark clouds and soft thunder rolled in the distance. But inside the Bella Vista restaurant, the warm lights glowed gently. The air smelled of fresh bread and roasted garlic, and every table was full. But tonight, people weren't just here for the food. They were here for her. Sarah, the same girl who used to walk through the restaurant unnoticed, now had people asking for her before they even opened the menu. Some guests came early just to get the table closest to the piano. Others came only for dessert so they wouldn't miss her evening performance. Few brought phones ready to record her playing. They didn't see her as just the waitress anymore. They saw her as someone special, someone with a gift. She still served food. During her shifts, she hadn't quit her waitress duties yet. But every night, at exactly 7:30, she cleaned her hands, took off her apron, and walked to the grand piano in the corner. The whole restaurant would fall quiet as she sat down. She didn't speak, she didn't bow, she didn't explain. She just played that night. She played something different. Instead of classical music, she played a mix of jazz and soft pop, something that made people smile and tap their fingers on the table. The melody moved like a dance, playful and light, like a gentle wind on a warm day. Her fingers flew over the keys so fast and beautifully that people couldn't look away. It felt like magic. Even the clinking of forks and glasses stopped. All eyes were on her. As the last note faded, a wave of claps filled the restaurant. Some stood up. A man at the bar cheered. A young woman near the window wiped a tear from her. And through it all, Sarah sat still, chest rising with quiet pride, heart beating fast. She stood, nodded politely, and walked back to the kitchen to continue her shift. But she wasn't the same shy girl who once avoided eye contact. Walked straighter now. Her steps were light. She felt alive later that night. As she was washing dishes, Leo walked into the back with a wide smile on his face. "Guess what?" said, holding up his phone. Sarah looked over, curious. "You're on the front page of a local news blog. Someone wrote an article, The Waitress Who Plays Like an Angel. They shared your video again. It's getting thousands of views every hour." Sarah dried her hands quickly and leaned in to read. The article told her story, or at least part of it. It spoke about how one moment of courage changed everything. How her music had touched people in ways words couldn't. It even mentioned her background, that she had no formal training. That she once gave up music to support her family. It didn't include her name, but it didn't have to. Everyone at Bella Vista knew who it was. "I didn't expect all this," she whispered. Leo smiled kindly. Sometimes when light finally shines on someone who's been in the dark too long, the whole world takes notice. That weekend, something even more unexpected happened. A famous music blogger, one with millions of followers, shared her video on social media with the caption, "This girl needs a record deal now." Everything exploded. Within a few days, her inbox was full of messages. Some were from kind strangers. Others were from reporters, bloggers, and talent scouts. One email was from a music company in New York. Another was from a piano teacher offering free lessons. One woman offered to help her make a professional YouTube channel. People she had never met were cheering for her, believing in her. But it wasn't just online. People started showing up in real life too. One night a man walked in wearing a long coat and glasses. He ordered coffee and sat silently in the corner, watching her play. After her song, he walked up to her. "Hi," he said, holding out his card. "My name's Aaron Blake. I'm a music producer." Sarah stared at him, unsure what to say. "I've seen your videos. You've got something real. Not just talent, soul. The kind that can't be taught. I'd like to talk to you about recording. Music, if you're interested." Sarah took the card with shaking hands. "Thank you," she said. "Take your time," he added. "Think about it, but don't wait too long. The world is ready for you." That night she couldn't sleep. Mind was spinning. She lay in her small bed, staring at the ceiling, holding the card in her hand. Could she really do it? Could she step out of this life, out of this restaurant, and chase something bigger? Her younger brother peeked into the room. "You okay?" he asked sleepily. "I think so," she said softly. "Just thinking." He sat on the edge of the bed. "I saw your video. My friends at school said you're famous now." She smiled. "I'm not famous. Just ... lucky." "No," he said. "You're really good. You always were. You just forgot." She looked at him with tears in her eyes. "Maybe I did." The next morning, Sarah went back to the church where she used to practice. Father Gabriel welcomed her with a smile. "I heard the news," he said. "The whole city's talking about you." Sarah sat at the piano. "I don't know what to do." "What do you want to do?" he asked gently. "I want to keep playing. I want to make music. But I'm scared. What if I fail? What if they stop clapping?" He nodded slowly. "Let me tell you something my mother once said to me. She said, don't play music to be clapped for. Play it because your soul needs to sing." Sarah closed her eyes. The fear didn't disappear, but something else grew stronger. That evening, when she returned to Bella Vista, something felt different. Not because of the lights or the people or the excitement, but because she had made a decision. She played that night, like never before. She chose a powerful piece, one with ups and downs, joy and sorrow, speed and silence. It told a story. Her story. The customers didn't just listen, they felt every note. Some cried, some held hands, some forgot to eat their food. It was like she had cast a spell over the whole room. After the last note, there was silence. Then, someone stood up and began to clap slowly, and more joined in. Soon the room erupted into cheers. Some guests shouted her name. One lady ran up with a napkin and asked for her autograph. Sarah laughed, not out of pride, but out of disbelief. It was all so strange, so beautiful. After her shift, Leo found her again. "Aaron Blake called the restaurant today," he said. Sarah looked up nervous. "He wants to set up a meeting. With you? At his studio." She nodded. "Okay, I'll go." Leo grinned. "I'm proud of you." Sarah smiled. "Thank you for letting me play." "Thank you," he replied, "for reminding all of us what music really means." That weekend, she took a bus across the city to a studio she had only seen in pictures. It was big, modern, and filled with instruments. Aaron greeted her warmly and introduced her to his team. They sat in a recording room and asked her to play. She didn't bring sheet music. She didn't bring notes. Just her fingers and her heart. She played. And when she finished, there was no laughter, no questions, just quiet amazement. Aaron leaned forward. "We can work with this. We can build something real." Sarah left the studio with tears in her eyes, not because she had signed a deal, not because she was becoming something new, but because she was finally becoming who she had always been. The waitress who once stood invisible in a crowd was now a woman the world could no longer ignore. And, the best part, she still wasn't playing for fame. She was playing because her soul had waited too long to sing. Sarah never imagined how fast life could change. Just a few weeks ago, she was carrying plates, filling glasses, and quietly walking through the same restaurant where people barely noticed her. Now those same people were booking tables just to hear her play for 5 minutes. Videos of her music were being shared across the country. Music producers were calling her. News channels were asking for interviews. Even strangers in grocery stores recognized her and said, "Aren't you the piano girl from Bella Vista?" But through all the attention, Sarah tried to stay grounded. She still lived in the same small apartment. She still cooked dinner for her younger brother and checked his homework before bed. She still took the bus to work. The only difference now was that she had something to look forward to, something she never allowed herself to dream about before. She was finally doing what she loved. After her meeting with Aaron Blake, the music producer, things moved quickly. He invited her to his studio again, this time to record a few of her original pieces. Sarah didn't have any sheet music. She didn't even have formal compositions. But she carried all her melodies in her heart. Each tune had a story behind it, some full of joy, others full of pain. She would close her eyes and let her fingers tell those stories. One morning, after a long recording session, Aaron sat across from her and said, "You know, I've worked with hundreds of artists, but your sound is different. It's honest. You don't play for fame. You play like you need to. That's rare." Sarah smiled. "Music saved me," she said softly. "It was the only thing that made me feel like myself again." Aaron nodded. "Then let's make sure the world hears it." Over the next few weeks, they created a small album together, just 5 tracks, each one raw, emotional, and full of feeling. They didn't use auto-tune or fancy effects. They recorded it just the way Sarah played, real, soft, and powerful. The album was released online with the title, Still Here. The name meant something personal to her. After everything she had been through, losing her mother, working long shifts, being ignored and laughed at, she was still here. Still standing. Still dreaming. And now, still playing? The response to the album was stronger than anyone expected. Thousands of people downloaded it, Listeners from other countries wrote messages saying her music brought them peace during hard times. Some said her songs helped them cry for the first time in years. Others said they felt like someone finally understood them. Sarah read every message with tears in her eyes. She never thought she could touch so many lives just by doing what she loved. But with all the love came pressure. People wanted more music, more interviews, more performances. Aaron suggested organizing a small live concert in the city, something simple, just her and a piano on a small stage. Sarah was nervous, but agreed. The concert was planned for a Saturday night in a cozy downtown theater. Only 100 seats. Nothing fancy. But it sold out within 2 hours. On the night of the concert, Sarah stood backstage, her hands shaking. She peeked through the curtain and saw the full room. People chatting, waiting, some even holding flowers. Her brother sat in the front row. Smiling proudly, Leo, her manager from Bella Vista, was there too, sitting beside Father Gabriel from the church. Even some of her co-workers had come. She took a deep breath. This wasn't a restaurant anymore. There were no trays to carry, no water glasses to fill, no rude jokes or fake smiles. This was her moment. The announcer introduced her, and the lights dimmed. She walked onto the stage, sat at the piano, and took a deep breath. The silence in the room was heavy but comforting. She touched the keys and began to play. Her first piece was soft and gentle, a slow tune that felt like morning light creeping through a window. Her second piece was faster, brighter, like a memory of laughter, and came a third, one she had never shared before. It was the one she had written the night her mother passed away. It was full of sorrow and love, like a conversation with someone who was gone but still listening. No one made a sound, not a single cough, not a whisper. The room was frozen in emotion. When she finished, there was a long pause. Then the applause came, loud, rising like a wave. People stood up, clapping with full hearts. Sarah bowed, tears in her eyes. After the show, people waited in line to meet her. Some hugged her, others handed her handwritten letters. An elderly man said, "I lost my wife last year. Night you brought her back to me for a few minutes. Thank you." Teenage girl said, "Your music helped me feel less alone." Mother said, "My son has autism. He never sits still. But tonight he sat through every song without moving. You gave us a miracle." Sarah smiled and cried and hugged as many as she could. But she also felt overwhelmed. She wasn't used to so much attention. She just wanted to play, not be a star. That night, back in her apartment, her brother brought her a cup of tea. "You were amazing," he said. Sarah smiled weakly. "I'm so tired. You should rest," he said. "You deserve it." Sarah couldn't sleep. Her mind was racing. Was she ready for this kind of life? Could she handle the pressure? The expectations? She missed the quiet nights when it was just her and the old piano in the church. The next morning, she received a phone call that shook her. It was from one of the producers of a national talent show. They had seen her videos and wanted her to audition. They said she had a real chance to win, to tour across the country, to get a record deal. Sarah didn't know what to say. Part of her wanted to say yes. The other part of her wanted to hide. She met with Aaron the next day to talk about it. "It's a big opportunity," he said. "It could open even more doors for you." "I know," she replied. But ... what if I lose myself in all this?" Looked at her seriously. "Then don't forget who you are. Stay real. Keep playing from the heart." Sarah nodded. "I don't care about fame. I just want to make music that matters. Then you'll be fine," he said. "Remember, you're in control. You don't have to say yes to everything." That advice stayed with her. She decided not to audition for the show. Instead, she accepted a scholarship from a music school that had reached out to her. They offered her a full ride, saying her natural talent deserved professional growth. It wasn't a flashy opportunity, didn't come with cameras or spotlights, but it felt right. She started classes a month later. Every day, she studied theory, technique, composition. At first, it was hard. She had never learned music in a classroom. But her teachers saw her potential. They gave her space to be creative, to explore. For the first time, she wasn't just a waitress with a dream, she was a student with a future. Still, she returned to Bella Vista once a week to play. Not for the crowd, not for the fame, but because that place had given her her first chance, and she would never forget that. One evening, while playing her usual set, she saw someone unexpected walk in, the same man who had mocked her months ago, the one who had laughed and said, "Let the waitress play." He was alone this time. No friends, no fancy watch. He looked quiet, even nervous. After she finished her performance, he waited by the door. "Hi," he said awkwardly. Sarah raised her eyebrows but stayed calm. "I just wanted to say, I was wrong about you. About everything, thought. About that night a lot, I was a jerk, and I'm sorry." Sarah looked at him. She remembered how he had laughed at her, how small he made her feel. But now, he looked small, lost. "Thank you for apologizing," she said gently. "I really am sorry," he said again. And left. Sarah stood there for a moment, heart full of mixed feelings. Forgiveness was hard, but somehow it felt like closing an old chapter. She let out a deep breath. The restaurant was quiet now. The crowd had gone. She walked to the piano and sat down again, not to perform, not to impress, just to play. Her fingers moved slowly, softly, telling a story only she knew. A story of a girl who had once been invisible, who had been laughed at, ignored, doubted. A girl who found her voice in the black and white keys of an old piano, and now the whole world was listening. Sarah's life had changed in a way she'd never imagined. Just days ago, she was only a waitress, someone who people hardly noticed. She served food, cleared tables, and always kept her head down. No one asked her name, no one saw her talent, and most didn't even look her in the eyes. But after that one unforgettable night, when she touched the piano and filled the restaurant with music straight from her heart, everything became different. People didn't just see a waitress anymore. They saw someone special. The video of her playing at the restaurant had been uploaded to social media by a customer who was there that night. That person had only wanted to capture a funny moment when a waitress dared to touch the piano. But instead, they captured something magical. The video spread quickly. Within hours, thousands of people had shared it. Within a day, it had gone viral around the world. Sarah didn't even know the video existed until a coworker showed her the next morning. She stared at the screen, shocked to see her face everywhere. People were commenting, calling her a hidden genius, a miracle, a rising star. At first, Sarah didn't know how to react. She was used to being invisible. All this attention made her nervous. She still had to go to work, still had bills to pay. But people started coming into the restaurant just to see her. Some asked her to play again. Some brought flowers. A few customers cried when they met her, saying her music touched their hearts. She smiled politely, still unsure if this was real, or just a dream. Her manager, who once barely acknowledged her presence, now treated her with kindness and respect. He offered her the chance to play the piano during weekend dinners. He said it would bring more customers and she could keep all the tips from the piano shows. Sarah agreed, though part of her still felt unsure. She didn't play for money. She'd played because it was the only way she could express herself. But she also knew this opportunity was rare, and she couldn't ignore it. Within days, she received emails from talent agents, music schools, even newspapers. A local TV station called the restaurant and asked for an interview. At first, Sarah refused. She didn't think she was good enough. She kept saying, "I'm just a waitress." But her best friend from the restaurant, a kind older woman named Martha, looked at her and said, "You're not just anything. You're a gift, and the world deserves to hear you." That sentence stayed in Sarah's mind. Finally, she agreed to one interview, then another. Each time she spoke, people were moved by her simple, honest story. She didn't pretend to be famous. She didn't act proud. She talked about how she learned piano from YouTube videos and old books, how she used to play in the church near her home, how she had given up music when life got too hard. She told them about her mother, who had passed away when Sarah was just 17. Her mother had always believed in her music and used to call her my little Beethoven. But when she died, Sarah had to become the adult in the house. She worked full-time, gave up school, and stopped playing piano except in secret. At night, when no one could hear, people felt her story deeply. They said it gave them hope. They said it reminded them not to judge others by their job or clothes or status. Soon, Sarah's face was on magazine covers and music websites. She was invited to perform at charity events and local theaters. She even got a letter from a famous piano composer who said her playing had the rare quality of truth. One day, while she was playing the restaurant piano, a well-dressed man in a suit sat quietly in the corner. He listened without saying a word. After her set, he walked up to her and handed her a card. He was from a well-known music foundation that helped talented young people get professional training. He said, "You don't need to stay in this restaurant forever. Come train. With us, we'll help you become the pianist you were always meant to be." Sarah was shocked. It sounded like a dream, but this time she didn't say no. She looked at the piano, then at the restaurant, then back at the man. And she nodded. Within weeks, she left her waitress job, hugged her coworkers goodbye, and moved to New York to begin her new life. At the Music Foundation, she received lessons from top instructors, access to grand pianos, and endless support. At first, she struggled. She had never studied music theory properly, never had a teacher, never played in front of so many professionals. But she worked hard, just like she had as a waitress. She listened, practiced, and never gave up. Her fingers grew stronger, faster, more expressive. Months passed. She was invited to perform in a grand concert hall as part of a special event. Featuring new talents, and the curtain lifted, Sarah stood beside a piano far bigger than any she had ever played. She looked out at the huge crowd, her heart racing. In the front row, she saw familiar faces: Martha, her old manager, even some of the customers who used to laugh at her. But now they were silent, watching her with admiration. She sat down, closed her eyes, and began to play. This time she didn't feel nervous. She felt free. Every note was a piece of her story, her pain, her hope, her love for her mother, her lonely nights in the restaurant. The music was alive, and the audience could feel it. She finished. The room exploded with applause. People stood, clapped, some even wept. After the show, a famous music critic said, "She plays not with perfection, but with purpose. You don't just hear her music, you feel her soul." Sarah smiled when she read that. She didn't care about being famous. She cared about touching people's hearts. In the months that followed, Sarah toured different cities, sharing her music and her story. She visited schools and talked to students about believing in their dreams. She played in hospitals, prisons, orphanages, places where people needed hope. She told everyone the same thing: never let your job or your struggles define you. There's more inside you than the world sees. 1 year after that first night at the restaurant, she returned to the same place not as a waitress, but as a guest of honor. The manager invited her to perform a surprise piece during dinner. The crowd was excited. Some remembered her, some had only heard the story. She sat at the same piano, touched the same keys, and once again filled the room with magic. Afterward, the young woman who had once laughed at her came up, eyes shining with tears. She said, "I judged you. I was wrong. You taught me something important." Sarah hugged her and said, "Thank you for listening." And just like that, Sarah's journey came full circle, being laughed at to being applauded, from being ignored to being loved, from serving tables to stealing hearts with every note she played. She proved that dreams don't die just because life gets hard. They wait quietly until the moment you're brave enough to chase them, and she did.